Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we are looking at something that feels like it's straight out of a sci-fi novel, but it's happening right now in classrooms all across the country. We're unpacking a viral legal reality where school districts are literally taking some of the world's biggest tech and social media giants to court. We're going to dig into the source material to figure out exactly what's driving this completely unprecedented legal clash. Okay, let's dive into this. The central mystery of our legal case file today is pretty straightforward. Schools are suing, but who is actually responsible? For years, the debate about kids and screens has mostly happened at the dinner table, parents expressing concern. But what our sources reveal is a massive escalation. It's no longer just a household argument. Formal, institutional entities, like entire school districts, are claiming direct, quantifiable harm. They're asking the justice system to figure out where the accountability lies when an entire generation's learning environment fundamentally shifts. To make sense of these lawsuits, we really need to look at three core charges that turn these abstract tech complaints into concrete institutional harms. 1. The daily struggle for student attention. 2. The enormous task of reworking traditional lesson plans. And 3. The diversion of vital educational funding. The districts are basically arguing that, together, these three factors are placing an absolutely unsustainable strain on their ability to actually educate kids. Exhibit A, the war for attention. So let's put on our investigative hats for a second and look at the modern classroom through the eyes of the plaintiffs. The very first claim in our source material highlights the exhausting, daily struggle just to capture a student's focus. Think about that wording for a second. It's a constant struggle. The lawsuits argue that teachers aren't just delivering a curriculum anymore, they're walking into a room and being forced to actively compete against highly engineered, billion-dollar algorithms just to secure basic human attention. It completely changes the baseline of what it even means to be an educator today. Let's break down exactly how this plays out mechanically. Step 1. Algorithms literally condition our brains for frequent, rapid shifts in attention. Step 2. When students bring those habits into the classroom, collective focus just fragments. Step 3. The educator has to constantly stop instruction to reel the room back in. It's a vicious cycle. Just imagine how disruptive this loop is during a typical 45-minute class period. The continuity of learning is just constantly being broken.
Exhibit B, rewiring the classroom.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the specific language being used. The schools are talking about brains negatively affected by social media. They're essentially defining what you could call an algorithm-affected brain. The argument here is that constant scrolling has altered cognitive patterns so deeply that traditional educational approaches simply don't connect anymore. The foundational tool of the school, the traditional lesson, is misfiring because the audience's cognitive baseline has completely shifted. Look at the contrast here. On the one side, you have your traditional lesson plan. It relies on deep reading, sustained focus, slow information building. But now, schools are being forced to pivot toward an algorithm-adapted model. To keep kids engaged, teachers now have to create highly stimulating environments with constant attention resets. It's almost mirroring the fast-paced delivery of the apps themselves. The plaintiffs argued this isn't just a minor tweak, it's a fundamental, structural change to how education has to be delivered. Which brings us right to this exact quote from the source material regarding the harms schools are facing. Reworking lesson plans for brains negatively affected by social media. I really want to emphasize the massive amount of uncompensated labor happening here. Districts are claiming that educators are spending countless hours tearing down old curricula and rebuilding them from scratch. And they aren't doing this because they want to. They're doing it out of absolute necessity just to bridge the gap created by these platforms. Exhibit C, the financial toll. Now, according to the source, this crisis isn't just academic. It has triggered a full-blown mental health emergency within student populations. To manage this, schools are being forced to massively expand their mental health services. We're talking more counselors, more intervention specialists, more support staff. But public school budgets are finite. When you have to rapidly expand one sector of your budget to deal with a sudden emergency, well, that money has to come from somewhere else.
And this brilliantly illustrates the brutal opportunity cost we're talking about. Every single dollar spent mitigating the mental health fallout linked to social media is a dollar diverted from other essential programs. You really have to ask yourself, what standard programs, extracurriculars, or facility upgrades are being completely cut or delayed just so districts can afford to manage this crisis?
You can literally see the strain visually here. Core academics, which, should absolutely dominate a school's resources, are shrinking. Meanwhile, the slice dedicated to behavioral management and mental health interventions is expanding dramatically. The school district's argument is pretty simple. They are footing a massive bill for a crisis they didn't create, and it's fundamentally compromising their primary mission to educate.
The verdict:
Assessing accountability.
So the crucial point is understanding the sheer compounding scale of this systemic strain placed on the education system. Let's quickly review the case file we've built today. 1. The exhausting struggle for stolen focus. 2. The massive labor required to force curriculum changes for algorithm-affected brains. And 3. The drained educational funds being diverted into mental health services. The lawsuits claim that when you stack all of these together, you are basically looking at institutional sabotage.
What you really need to take away from this explainer is that we have crossed a threshold. That abstract, everyday backlash against tech has fully transformed into a legal battle over concrete educational damages. The courts are now being asked to objectively weigh the operational reality of our public schools against the operational design of social media platforms. It's a totally neutral pursuit of facts to figure out if liability exists when a product fundamentally alters a public institution's ability to function.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question to ponder. Should social media companies be held financially and legally accountable for this, or must society at large just absorb the burden of this massive educational shift? The answer to that question is likely going to shape the future of both tech and education for decades to come. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I know I'll definitely be watching how these lawsuits unfold, and I hope you will too. Keep asking questions and keep exploring.